It's funny how we can have a dream for so long and and just keep not noticing that we're not moving forward on it. The golden cage is an idea that I had really early in my life. And in fact, it was a really important part of my development as a musician. I started writing the piece. I got the idea for the piece when I was 19, and I started working on it. And that's when I realized that in order to finish the piece, I was going to have to learn to read and write music, which is something I didn't know how to do. I knew how to compose or invent things, but I didn't know how to actually get them down on paper. And so I went back to school to learn to do that. And while I was at school, my school needed a harp player. I was at a junior college. They needed a harp player, and that's when my harp career started. And then by the end, I ended up going to UC Berkeley, and I worked with the music department and the drama department there, and I still had that passion to finish this piece. I finished it. I presented it as my final project. And then, of course, I was also deep onto the harp path. After I left UC Berkeley, I then worked with a director, and we rewrote the piece and produced it in a theater. And that's when it stopped. After that, it got some really, really sweet reviews in the San Francisco Chronicle, I think it was. But I didn't know how to take it further. And my harp career was really taking off. And so I just followed, the path that was really working. But I could not let go of this idea, the theme of these two characters, one who's in a cage and can't remember how she got there and can't get out, and one who has been searching his whole life for the security of a golden cage. And it really came to me, I think these characters came to me when I was searching as a young person about, is my life going to be about security? Is my life going to be about freedom? How do they relate? I kept thinking about the piece my whole life, and I kept coming back to it. I had, worked with a director, maybe 5 or 6 years after I left college, did another presentation of it, and it kept being strong in my mind. And then about, I guess, maybe 15 years ago, I was just like, hey, this is a really important story that I really want to tell. And I need to recommit to that. Because I realized that commitment is really about recommitment, that no matter if we lose that commitment, if we have that passion, if there's something a story we want to tell, or some part of ourselves that we want to express, or something that's us, it's not just, it's a matter of recommitment and continual recommitment and recommitment. And what I discovered is that I think many, if not all of us, have something like this, or many things like this, things that we started when we were young, or anyway younger than we are, and we didn't know how to take it to the next level. And so it just kind of goes on a shelf, and if you're lucky, you put it on a shelf in a box that you keep. And in fact, it's these kinds of projects and these kinds of passions that I help other people with in my mentorship program, Harness Your Muse. And I think that was also part of what gave me even a renewed commitment to this, is working with other people and going through that process of taking a sort of amorphous or half-finished or an idea dream to fruition with other people helped me reconnect even more with this dream of mine. And seeing it happen and watching the process and supporting people and finding ways to support people that now I can use for myself. And one of the things that I realized was that I really could not do it alone. And one of the big moments of kind of breakthrough for me, there's two big ones. One is that I joined a feedback group of other people who were writing musical theater. And I've been in that group for a long time and gotten a lot of feedback from them. Another really big breakthrough for me was realizing I literally could not do it by myself, even if I felt like a big baby that I couldn't sit down. And so I had people who were supporting me and someone I had to report to every day at the end of the day, having done my 30 minutes of work on it. At one point, I was just like, I'm just going to work on this for 30 minutes a day. Having someone there who was like, if you don't send me that 30 minutes, I'm killing you, or, whatever. That was a great support. And then also working with Tim, a music director and piano player, and just making a commitment to meet him every Wednesday night for 3 hours to play through what I had. That was another really big breakthrough. And then the more recent breakthrough has been twofold. One has been sort of an emotional breakthrough or a story breakthrough. There were some resistances that I had to what the story could mean and what I would allow the story to mean. So I was always struggling with both the beginning and the end, though the middle really made a lot of sense. And I was struggling with it. And I really could not have finished this story or come up with the ending without living as much of my life as I have. And also being willing in the story to have the characters turn to each other and admit a need to turn to each other. I kept resisting that and insisting, no, they must be independent and they must, do this and this must be this, which I know reveals things about my own life, and coming to an acceptance of levels of humanity that I struggle with in my own life, and allowing the characters to go through that was really important in an emotional way. And then the other thing that happened is I reconnected with my musical theater writing buddy from high school, who's been writing musical theater, has stuff on Broadway and off Broadway. This has been his life. And he has started a really amazing new way of sharing musicals, which is called streaming musicals. And if you've seen my my project Invention and Alchemy, where I take people into the orchestra, into my shorter stories, but with symphony and telling stories, it's very similar to that. It's a way of bringing people into the musical in a very intimate way, using video, but not trying to make it look like a movie, really focusing on the intimacy of letting people to get closer, as like closer than the front row. So reconnecting with Paul and streaming musicals, and then finding an actor who I could work with. And so it's come to a new level. And one other thing that I recently did that really seemed to bring it to a new level is I created a 12-minute version of the piece that I could sit down at the piano and just share the story with people. And as I started doing that and sitting down with people and playing it and listening to the conversations that happened afterwards, where people were talking about the themes and being inspired by the themes and so much of the things that they had to say, and I began to realize what kind of meaning this piece seems to have for other people, or what kind of meaning the themes, what kind of conversations, deep conversations, the theme is bringing out in other people. And so I kind of came out of my own cage with it, and so that's where I am right now. I've started to be getting funding for it. I'm so grateful. People have been giving me funding, for the development of the piece up till this point. And now I'm working with the Streaming Musicals people. We're talking about filming it as soon as spring or mid 2019, and talking about how that all works, making the opportunities for investment in the project. And now really working on the editing to get it to the point where I can start workshopping it, start showing it to people, and letting it out of the cage and letting it fly. And that's where I am with the project, and I am open to any questions. I love to talk about it, and yet I find that I often will sort of hide because it's such a deep project to me, and it's such a big part of my life, a big part of my secret life. And so that's where I'm at with the Golden Cage.